In the quiet suburbs of Richmond, British Columbia, Cindy James lived a nightmare. For years, she reported being stalked, attacked, and tormented by an unseen force. Police found no answers. Was she the victim of a cunning stalker, or haunted by her own mind? Her cries for help echo in the silence she left behind. As years of harassment wore on, doubt crept into the investigation. The police, overwhelmed by nearly 100 incidents and no evidence, began to question Cindy's story. The attacks always happened when Cindy was alone. Some wondered if she was staging the events or if someone close to her was involved. Even her private investigator witnessed inexplicable violence. The mystery only deepened, leaving everyone to wonder what was truly happening to Cindy James. Was Cindy James a victim or the architect of her own torment? This question divides everyone who examines the case. Some believe she was terrorized by a brilliant stalker, while others think she suffered from a severe mental illness. Her death, with hands and feet bound, remains the ultimate puzzle. The scales of justice remain balanced between two harrowing possibilities. On June 8, 1989, Cindy James was found in the overgrown yard of an abandoned house. Her hands and feet were bound, her body bruised, a chilling end to years of terror. The discovery shattered her family and community, leaving one haunting question: who was truly responsible for Cindy's fate? The quiet street was transformed by police tape and flashing lights. Forensic investigators found Cindy James bound with complex knots hidden behind bushes. Needle marks echoed her past reports of being drugged. The evidence, bindings, drugs, and her secluded location posed a chilling paradox: murder or something even more unthinkable. Cindy's death eerily mirrored her past, found bound, helpless, just as she had been at least 5 times before. Police files were thick with reports. Cindy discovered in garages, ditches, always tied up, always claiming an unknown attacker. Was this a killer perfecting his method, or a tragic pattern of self-harm gone too far? To her family, it was proof of a relentless stalker. To skeptics, evidence of psychological distress. The discovery of her body didn't solve the mystery, it deepened it, blurring the line between victim and perpetrator. Cindy's past wasn't just context, it was the key to a case that would haunt investigators for decades. Cindy's nightmare began with a phone call, silent at first, then menacing. The caller knew details of her life, turning her home into a prison of paranoia. Sinister notes followed, typed threats left where she'd find them, each one more personal. Police advised caution, but the harassment only escalated. Changing her number and routines did nothing. The stalker was always one step ahead. The stage was set for a relentless campaign of terror. The harassment turned physical, smashed lights, cut phone lines, rocks through windows. The most chilling act, Cindy's dog strangled in her backyard, a brutal warning. She fortified her home, but fear closed in, her world shrinking to locked doors and drawn curtains. Police found no evidence, no suspects, only Cindy's growing terror. The attacks were calculated, methodical, and deeply personal. The tormentor remained a ghost, but the threat was all too real. January 1983. Cindy was found unconscious in her garage, bruised, a stocking around her neck. She claimed an unknown assailant attacked her, but police found no evidence of another person. The assault marked a turning point. The threat was now violently real. Doubt crept in, How could an attacker leave no trace? For Cindy and her supporters, the danger was undeniable. For police, the mystery deepened. The Phantom had crossed the line from threats to violence. After the attack, the harassment grew stranger. Footsteps on the roof, shadows at the window, lights flickering. Police responded but found nothing. No evidence, no intruder, just Cindy's fear. Sometimes she was found tied up or injured with no memory of the attack. Investigators began to question, was this the work of a cunning stalker or Cindy herself? The rift between Cindy and the police widened, her family and private investigator standing firmly by her side. Was Cindy hunted by a phantom or haunted by her own mind? The answer would define her fate. Cindy James endured relentless harassment, transforming her life into a siege of fear and survival. Over 7 years, she reported nearly 100 episodes of terror. Her existence became a defensive crouch, a state of perpetual readiness. Despite all precautions, the attacks grew more violent and bizarre. Each new assault pushed her further into isolation and despair. Desperate for help, Cindy hired Ozzy Cabin, a former Mountie, as her private investigator and protector. He installed surveillance, watched over her, and soon witnessed the impossible. One night, he found Cindy stabbed and pinned to the floor, yet no sign of an intruder. The case left Caban and the police baffled, protecting Cindy from a ghost. As bizarre, evidence-free incidents mounted, police skepticism grew. Officers began to suspect Cindy was staging the attacks, not suffering them. The theory gained traction, shifting the investigation's focus. Cindy's pleas for help were now seen as symptoms, not evidence. The system she trusted began to doubt her, leaving her isolated and alone. By the late 1980s, years of terror and disbelief had left Cindy James exhausted and isolated. Her life shrank to a single focus: survival. She recorded desperate pleas on cassette tapes, her voice trembling. "I'm so scared. I know someone is going to kill me." These haunting messages remain a testament to her fear and her fight to be believed. By the spring of 1989, years of terror had pushed Cindy James to the breaking point. Her world became a prison, her mind unraveling under relentless fear. In and out of hospitals, her story never changed. Someone was trying to kill her. Yet, in the safety of psychiatric care, the attacks stopped, leaving everyone questioning what was real. In her final weeks, Cindy James sensed the end was near. She recorded haunting tapes, her voice trembling with fear and exhaustion. These tapes are a chilling testament, her desperate plea, a record of terror, and a haunting message from the edge. Whether victim or misunderstood, Cindy's fear was real, her final words echoing in the darkness. On May 25, 1989, Cindy James vanished. She'd gone grocery shopping but never returned. Her car was found abandoned, purse and groceries inside, a single man's glove left on the seat. For 2 weeks there was only silence. Her loved ones left waiting, the mystery deepening and hope fading with every passing day. When Cindy James's body arrived at the morgue, the autopsy revealed lethal doses of morphine and flurazepam. Her hands and feet were bound, and needle marks showed how the drugs entered her system. The coroner listed overdose as the cause of death, but whether it was suicide or murder remained a haunting mystery. The most contentious and debated aspect of the entire investigation centered on the bindings. Cindy's hands and feet were tied securely behind her back. The knots were complex and tight. This single fact became the linchpin for both competing theories of her death. For those who believe she was murdered, the answer was simple. An attacker drugged her, tied her up, and left her to die. The bindings were clear and overwhelming evidence of a third-party assailant. No one, they argued, could possibly tie their own hands and feet behind their back in such a manner, especially not after injecting themselves with a massive incapacitating dose of morphine and sedatives. It seemed to defy all logic and physical capability. However, investigators were obligated to explore every possibility, no matter how unlikely. They posed a chilling question to experts. Was it physically possible for a person to do this to themselves? The answer they received was not the definitive no that many expected. Experts in escapology and knots reluctantly admitted that it was, in theory, possible. A person with enough flexibility and determination could potentially manage to tie their own feet and then bring their hands behind their back and secure them. It would be an incredibly difficult and contorted act, but it was not strictly impossible. This sliver of possibility was all the skeptics needed to keep the suicide theory on the table. The drug element complicated this question even further. The toxicology report showed that the drugs would have taken effect quickly. This created a very narrow and improbable timeline for the suicide theory. Cindy would have had to inject herself with the fatal dose and then, in the few minutes before the powerful sedatives rendered her unconscious, engage in the complex and physically demanding task of binding her own hands and feet behind her back. Could a person maintain the focus, dexterity, and physical strength to tie such secure knots while their body was succumbing to a lethal overdose? It seemed to stretch the bounds of credulity to their breaking point. This question of possibility became the central battleground of the case. It was a debate that pitted common sense against theoretical possibility. For Cindy's family and supporters, the suggestion that she had tied herself up was an absurd and insulting denial of the obvious. They saw it as the system twisting itself into logical knots to avoid admitting it had failed to catch a killer. For the police, who had spent years dealing with bizarre, unproven claims, this sliver of possibility was enough to prevent them from declaring her death a homicide. The entire case hung in this delicate balance, suspended between what was probable and what was perhaps just barely possible. After weeks of investigation, analysis of the autopsy results, and endless debate over the physical evidence, the coroner was faced with a profound dilemma. You know, a coroner's job is to make a definitive ruling on the manner of death, classifying it into one of a few distinct categories: natural, accident, suicide, or homicide. But in the case of Cindy James, none of these classifications seemed to fit perfectly. The evidence for suicide was contradicted by the bindings. The evidence for homicide was contradicted by the complete lack of any suspect or third-party DNA. The two dominant theories effectively canceled each other out, leaving a vacuum of uncertainty. The facts of the case simply did not support a conclusive ruling in any one direction. Faced with this intractable puzzle, the coroner made a rare and telling decision. Instead of forcing the case into a box where it did not belong, he chose the only option that accurately reflected the state of the evidence. He ruled Cindy James's death as undetermined. This ruling is reserved for cases where there is not enough evidence to confidently assign a manner of death. It is, in a way, an official acknowledgement of ambiguity, a statement that, despite a thorough investigation, the truth remains unknown. The ruling was a profound anticlimax, offering no closure to her family, no final answer to the public, and no clear path forward for law enforcement. This official ruling of undetermined effectively left Cindy's case in a state of permanent limbo. It was not officially a murder, so it did not trigger the full resources of a homicide investigation. It was not officially a suicide, so the book could not be closed on it either. It was simply an unexplained death. For her family, the ruling was a deep disappointment. They were certain she had been murdered, and felt the undetermined ruling was a way for the authorities to wash their hands of a difficult case they had mishandled from the start. It denied Cindy the justice they felt she deserved, and allowed her killer, if one existed, to remain free. The ruling cemented the enigma of Cindy James into a Canadian legal and criminal legend. It validated the complexity and strangeness of the case, admitting that even the experts could not solve it. The word undetermined became a haunting final adjective for her life story. It meant that, in the eyes of the law, she was neither a proven victim of murder nor the confirmed architect of her own demise. She was simply gone, leaving behind a legacy of fear, doubt, and a collection of baffling clues that pointed everywhere and nowhere at once. The official ruling was not an answer. It was the question, immortalized in a public record. One major theory suggests Cindy James was not targeted by an outside attacker, but suffered from a severe psychological illness, her own fractured mind orchestrating the terror. With no evidence of an intruder, some believe her dissociative state led her to stage the attacks, experiencing real fear and memory lapses. Ultimately, this theory sees her tragic death as the final act of a desperate, unconscious cry for help. Cindy James and her family believed she was the victim of a cunning, real-life killer who terrorized her for years. The evidence, her injuries, fear, and final audio tapes, was real, not imagined. Her death's circumstances, the complex knots, and her bound hands suggest a killer's work. To her supporters, dismissing her suffering was the true injustice. The phantom killer not only took her life, but left the world doubting he ever existed. While no official suspect was ever named or charged in the Cindy James case, speculation has naturally swirled around the people in her life. The most prominent figure of interest, at least in the court of public opinion, has always been her ex-husband, Dr. Roy Makepeace. The harassment began shortly after their acrimonious divorce, a timing that is too significant for many to ignore. Makepeace was a psychiatrist, a profession that gave him a deep understanding of the human mind and potentially how to manipulate it. Those who view him with suspicion wonder if he used his professional knowledge to orchestrate a campaign of terror so bizarre that it would make his ex-wife appear mentally unstable. However, the case against Makepeace is purely circumstantial and fraught with problems. He had solid alibis for many of the reported incidents, including the night of Cindy's final disappearance. He willingly cooperated with the police, passed a polygraph test, and there was never any physical evidence to link him to any of the scenes. While their divorce was contentious, many divorces are, and that is a long way from proving a 7-year campaign of violent harassment and murder. Friends of Makepeace described him as a calm and gentle man, incapable of such cruelty. The police investigated him thoroughly, but ultimately could not build a case, leaving his potential involvement as nothing more than a persistent and unproven shadow hanging over the mystery. Beyond the ex-husband, other potential suspects are even more speculative. Could it have been a former patient of Cindy's from her time as a nurse working with disturbed children? Perhaps someone with a fixation or a grudge that festered over time? This theory is plausible in that it provides an external attacker, but it lacks any specific person of interest. Another possibility is a stalker completely unknown to Cindy and her circle, a predator who chose her at random and became obsessed. This would explain why no one in her life could identify a motive or a likely culprit. This phantom-like figure could have been a sociopath who derived pleasure from the elaborate long-term torment of a stranger. The frustrating reality is that every potential path to a suspect leads to a dead end. Private investigator Ozzie Cabin and the police followed up on numerous leads over the years, investigating disgruntled acquaintances, former colleagues, and suspicious individuals reported in her neighborhood. None of these leads ever materialized into anything concrete. The list of official suspects in Cindy James's death remains empty. This lack of a viable alternative perpetrator is one of the main reasons the theory of self-harassment gained so much ground. Without a monster to point to, many found it easier to believe the monster was internal. Some believe Cindy James led a secret life, entangled in danger she hid from everyone. Theories suggest her silence was to protect herself or others, not a psychological block. If true, her secret died with her, leaving only questions and a mystery lost in the shadows. Decades after her body was discovered, the case of Cindy James refuses to fade. It endures as one of Canada's most haunting unsolved mysteries, a story that taps into our deepest fears and continues to captivate. Cindy's legacy is the question itself. What happened to her? The case refuses to die because it refuses to provide a single, simple truth. Was Cindy James the victim of a cunning murderer or the architect of her own tragic demise? Every piece of evidence seems to support both possibilities, leaving the mystery perfectly balanced. The truth remains elusive, the questions lingering in the air, an enigma that may never be solved. Cindy James's story dissolves into a fog of doubt and unanswered questions, much like the mist over British Columbia's streets. For years, she lived in terror, her suffering undeniable, yet evidence elusive. Her case remains a haunting puzzle. Was she hunted or lost in her own mind? The truth forever shrouded echoes on. The case of Cindy James remains an unsolved mystery, a haunting paradox that defies explanation. Was she a victim or the architect of her own tragedy? The truth is locked away, leaving only questions and a chilling reminder. Sometimes the answers we seek are forever out of reach.